The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward for nearly 1,000 feet. Its walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the emotions of those inside. Today, they glowed a cold, dismissive blue. Jack Morrison stood in the center of the chamber's speaking circle. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady brown eyes. His diplomatic uniform was simple compared to the elaborate robes and biosuits of the other species around him. Behind him stood his team: Lisa Chen, a young woman with sharp eyes who served as his aide; Paul Rodriguez, who represented the Mars colonies; Amanda Wright from the Europa stations; and old Professor Henry Kim, who had spent 50 years studying alien cultures. The council members sat in floating platforms arranged in perfect circles around them. Each platform held a different species. Some looked almost human. Others were clouds of gas, masses of tentacles, or geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. High Counselor Zixa Theta floated at the highest platform. The being was translucent, like a jellyfish made of starlight. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. The Galactic Council has reviewed humanity's petition for full membership status, Zix Theta said. The crystal walls pulsed with each word. We have observed your species for 100 of your years. We have studied your history, your wars, your peace, your growth. Jack remained still. He had been preparing for this moment for 5 years. Earth and her colonies had worked hard to meet every requirement the Council had set. They had reformed. Their governments controlled their weapons, shared their medical knowledge freely. However, Zixa Theta continued, and Jack felt his heart sink at that single word. The Council has reached its decision. The human petition for full membership is denied. The chamber filled with murmurs from various species. Some sounded pleased. Others seemed surprised. A few appeared disappointed. Lisa Chen shifted behind Jack, but he raised his hand slightly, telling her to stay calm. They had prepared for this possibility, though they had hoped it would not come to pass. Your species remains too volatile, Zix Theta explained. You are too unpredictable. You rush into situations without proper consideration. You form emotional attachments that cloud your judgment. You take risks that endanger not just yourselves, but those around you. The Velthari representative spoke. Next. It looked like a giant snake with scales that shifted between silver and gold. Perhaps in another century, when humanity has learned to control these primitive impulses, you may petition again. Your creativity is chaotic, added the Zenthran Empire's spokesman, Krelok. His tentacles waved as he spoke. You solve problems in ways that disturb the natural order. You refuse to follow established protocols that have worked for millennia. Jack listened to each criticism without expression. Paul Rodriguez was gripping his datapad so hard his knuckles were white. Amanda Wright stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched. Professor Kim simply looked sad, as if watching something precious die. We acknowledge that humanity has contributed certain benefits, Zix Theta continued, as if offering a consolation prize. Your medical advances have helped several species. Your soldiers have aided in peacekeeping operations. Your traders have brought interesting goods to market. But these small contributions do not outweigh the danger you represent, the Altarian governor Meltas interjected. His blue skin rippled with patterns that showed his agreement with the Council's decision. Full membership means access to our most protected technologies. It means a voice in decisions that affect trillions of beings. We cannot grant such power to a species that might use it recklessly. Jack finally moved. He stepped forward, his boots making soft sounds on the crystal floor. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. I understand the Council's concerns, he said. We thank you for your honest assessment of our species. This seemed to surprise several Council members. They had expected anger, arguments, perhaps even threats. Humans were known for their emotional responses. You have given us much to think about, Jack continued. We will need to discuss this decision with our governments and our people. There is nothing to discuss, said the Quellian representative, a small being that looked like a floating crystal with wings. The decision is final. You may continue as associate members with limited trade rights and protection under council law. But you will never sit on this council as equals. Jack nodded slowly. A strange smile appeared on his face. It was not angry or sad. It was the smile of someone who had just realized something important. Of course, Jack said. We understand. Completely. You've made your position very clear. He turned to his team. Please pack up our materials. We should return to Earth with this news. Lisa Chen began collecting the data pads and documents they had brought. They had contained proposals for new medical research, defensive strategies, against the threats from dark space and plans for colonial expansion that would have benefited everyone. Now she placed them carefully in sealed cases. As they prepared to leave, Ambassador Krelock called out, "Wait, you accept this so easily? We have denied your species' greatest ambition. Where is the famous human passion? Where are your protests?" Jack paused at the entrance to the chamber. He looked back at the assembled council. The crystal walls had shifted to a confused purple color. "Why would we protest?" Jack asked. "You have made your decision based on what you believe is best for the galaxy. We respect that. We simply need to adjust our plans accordingly." Adjust. Zixatheta's form flickered with uncertainty. "What do you mean?" "Well," Jack said, "we've been operating under the assumption that we would eventually be full partners in the Galactic Council. We've structured our entire relationship with the galaxy around that goal. Now that we know it will never happen, we need to reconsider our position." "You will continue as associate members," Melthas said quickly. "Nothing needs to change." Jack's smile grew slightly wider. "Everything has changed, Governor. You've told us that we will never be trusted, that we will always be considered too dangerous, too unpredictable, that no matter what we do, we will always be seen as lesser beings." He looked around the chamber one last time. "You've made it clear that humanity has no future here, not as equals, not as partners. We're merely useful tools to be kept at arm's length." Professor Kim spoke for the first time, his old voice carrying surprising strength. "For 100 years we've protected your shipping lanes, cured your diseases, and stood between you and the darkness at the edge of known space. And this is our reward." "You have been compensated," Zixtheta said defensively. "With money, Paul?" Rodriguez finally spoke, his anger barely controlled. "With limited technology? With the privilege of dying to protect beings who see us as primitive animals?" "That's enough, Paul," Jack said gently. He turned back to the council. "We thank you for your time. We thank you for your honesty. And we wish you well in your future endeavors." As the human delegation walked toward the exit, the crystal walls shifted through a rainbow of confused colors. The council members looked at each other with uncertainty. This was not how they expected humans to react. "Ambassador Morrison," Zixtheta called out one more time, "what will you tell your people?" Jack stopped at the doorway but did not turn around. "The truth. That the Galactic Council has spoken, and humanity has heard its message clearly." Then they were gone, leaving the council chamber in a silence that felt heavier than it should. The crystal walls slowly faded to a worried yellow. Outside, as they walked to their ship, Lisa Chen finally spoke. "They have no idea what they've just done, do they?" Jack looked up at the alien stars. "No," he said quietly. "They don't. They think we're just another species they can dismiss. They never bothered to truly understand what humanity is, what we've been doing out here, or why we do it." "So what now?" Amanda Wright asked. "Now?" Jack said, entering their ship. "Now we go home, and we begin the Greenwich Protocol." Paul Rodriguez smiled grimly. "They wanted us to adjust our plans. Let's show them what human adjustment looks like." As their ship lifted off from the council station, none of them looked back. There was too much work ahead to waste time on regret. The council had made their choice, now humanity would make theirs. Captain Sam Cooper read the message 3 times before he believed it. He sat in his cabin aboard the trading vessel Horizon, currently docked at Nexus Station, the busiest port in council space. The message was simple and direct, like all official Earth Government Communications. Greenwich Protocol activated. All human assets to withdraw from Council space within 72 hours. No exceptions. Sam called his crew to the bridge. Alice Park, his navigator, arrived first. She was a small woman who could plot a course through a meteor storm with her eyes closed. Tony Martinez, the engineer, came next, oil still on his hands from working on the engines. Greg Phillips, communications officer, was last, looking confused. "We're leaving," Sam told them. "Pack everything. Close all accounts. Cancel all contracts." "Leaving?" Tony asked. "We have deliveries scheduled for the next 6 months." "Not anymore," Sam said, showing them the message. "Earth is calling everyone home." Across Council space, the same scene played out on hundreds of human ships, stations, and colonies. The withdrawal was quiet, efficient, and complete. On the garden world of Thessia Prime, Dr. Catherine Shaw received her orders while working in her laboratory. She had been developing cures for 17 different plagues that affected various Council species. Her research had saved millions of lives. She called her staff together. There were 30 humans working at the facility, along with about 100 local helpers. "We're evacuating," she told them. "Start packing all research materials, samples, and equipment. Everything goes." Her assistant, Carl Young, looked shocked. "But we're so close to a cure for the Altarian lung rot. Another month and we could save their entire population." "I know," Catherine said sadly. "But orders are orders. The Council has made it clear we're not wanted as equals. We can't keep giving them our best while being treated as second-class citizens." Governor Melthos arrived at the facility within an hour, his blue skin rippling with distress patterns. "Dr. Shaw, I've heard disturbing rumors. Surely you're not leaving?" Catherine continued packing delicate equipment into specially designed cases. "I'm afraid we are, Governor. The Council's decision has consequences." "But my daughter," Melthos said desperately. "You saved her life just 6 months ago. The cure you developed for the neural plague will be leaving with us," Catherine said firmly. "All our research, all our cures, all our future discoveries, they're no longer available to the Council." "You would condemn billions to death?" Melthos asked, horrified. Catherine stopped packing and looked at him directly. "The Council condemned us to permanent inequality. They said we were too dangerous, too unpredictable to trust. If we're such a threat, surely it's better for everyone if we leave." Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, Commander Danny Torres received his orders while his patrol ship, the Defender, was engaged with pirates. His squadron of 12 ships had been protecting Council shipping lanes for 5 years without official support or recognition. "Sir," his second-in-command, Ruth Baker, said after reading the orders, "if we leave, these lanes will be undefended." Danny watched as his ships drove off another pirate attack. The merchant vessel they had just saved was Velthari, carrying food supplies to 3 colony worlds. "I know," Danny said. "Send the recall signal. All ships return to base for immediate departure." Within hours, the shipping lanes that humans had been protecting were empty of defenders. The pirates, who had been kept at bay by human patrols, couldn't believe their luck. On Mining Station 7, Frank Zhao supervised the shutdown of the massive operation he had been running for 15 years. The station produced rare minerals essential for Council ship drives. Humans had developed a new extraction method that increased yield by 300%, while reducing environmental damage to almost nothing. The Zenthran overseer, Clivex, watched in disbelief as the humans packed their equipment. "You cannot take the extraction machinery. It was built here." "With human designs and human expertise," Frank replied. "Check the contracts. All human innovations remain human property if the Council denies us full membership. But the entire Council fleet depends on these minerals," Clivex protested. "Then the Council should have thought of that before deciding we were too dangerous to trust," Frank said. On the resort world of Paradise, where rich Council members went to relax, human chefs, entertainers, and service staff quietly packed their belongings. The owner of the largest resort, a Quellian named Shimmer, begged the human staff manager, Betty Stone, to stay. "You humans provide the best service. Your cooking, your music, your art. Guests come here specifically for the human experience." Betty shrugged. Find others to do it. I'm sure the more civilized species can manage. At the Academy of Universal Knowledge, Professor Wayne Mitchell downloaded all human contributions to the Great Library, medical research, technological innovations, historical records, and cultural works. Then he deleted them from the Council's databases. The head librarian, an ancient being made of living wood called Grootmal, tried to stop him. This knowledge belongs to everyone. No, Wayne said. It belongs to those who value it. The Council has made it clear they don't value humanity. So we're taking our contributions with us. The withdrawal continued with clockwork precision. Human teachers left their posts at Council schools. Human doctors closed their clinics. Human engineers shut down the power plants they had designed. Human farmers took their advanced seeds and growing techniques with them. Most importantly, the human defense fleet that had been stationed at the Sentinel Line, the border between known space and the dark regions beyond, quietly powered down their stations and began the long journey home. Admiral Julie Blackwood supervised this withdrawal personally. For 20 years, humans had maintained 70% of the watch posts along the line. They had developed early warning systems, defensive weapons, and patrol patterns that had kept the unknown threats at bay. Admiral, her tactical officer, Ron Dixon, said, "We've detected movement beyond the line, something big." Julie looked at the readings. Whatever was out there, it was massive and moving toward Council space. "Log it and send a standard report to the Council, then continue our withdrawal." "Shouldn't we investigate?" Ron asked. "That's the Council's problem now," Julie replied. "We're too dangerous and unpredictable, remember? Let the civilized species handle it." As human ships departed, they left behind confusion and growing panic. Council members who had voted against humanity began receiving reports of system failures, abandoned posts, and canceled contracts. High Counselor Zix Theta called an emergency meeting. "The humans are leaving," it announced. "All of them." "Good," said the Velthari representative. "Let them go, we don't need their chaos." But Krelock was looking at his datapad with growing alarm. "They're not just leaving, they're taking everything. Every innovation, every improvement, every system they created, and according to the contracts, they have the legal right to do so." "Surely they'll return," Governor Melthus said hopefully. "This is just a negotiating tactic." "I don't think so," said the young Quellian representative who had been reviewing the departure patterns. "They're being too thorough. They're even taking their garbage with them. This isn't a statement, it's a complete severance." As the 72-hour deadline approached, the last human ship prepared to leave Council space. It was Jack Morrison's diplomatic vessel. He sent one final message to the Council. "As requested, humanity has adjusted its relationship with the Galactic Council. We are withdrawing all human presence from Council space. We wish you success in your future endeavors. Please do not attempt to contact us. As you've made clear, we are too dangerous for close association." The message ended with a set of coordinates, the location where Council ships would be stopped if they tried to enter human space. As the last human ship disappeared into hyperspace, the Council members looked at each other in the Grand Chamber. The crystal walls had turned a deep, worried purple. "They'll be back," Zix Theta said, but its voice lacked confidence. Outside in the shipping lanes, the first pirate attacks had already begun. On Thessia Prime, the first victims of the lung rot were beginning to die. At Mining Station 7, the extraction equipment stood silent. Along the Sentinel line, something large and hungry noticed that the guards were gone. The humans had not attacked. They had not threatened. They had not even protested. They had simply left, taking with them everything they had brought to the galaxy: protection, innovation, medicine, and hope. And in their absence, the Council was beginning to understand what they had really lost. 6 months had passed since the last human ship left Council space. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was no longer the calm, ordered place it had once been. The crystal walls flickered between angry red and fearful yellow as arguments broke out among the representatives. The Krellian ambassador, Torchin, burst through the chamber doors. His usually composed blue features were twisted in panic. His forearms waved frantically as he spoke. The Devourers have broken through the Sentinel line, he announced. 3 systems have already fallen. The entire Corvin sector is gone. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Devourers were a name from nightmares, a hive mind species from beyond the galactic edge that consumed everything in their path. They had been held at bay for so long that many younger species thought they were just stories to frighten children. High Counselor Zixa Theta pulsed with authority, trying to restore order. Send the fleet immediately. All available ships to the breach. The military coordinator, a massive silicon-based being called Granex, consulted his displays. Which fleet shall I send? What do you mean, which fleet? Zix Theta demanded. Send them all. Granex's form rumbled with distress. The Zenthran Navy is dealing with internal rebellions. After the human peacekeepers left, 3 of their colony worlds declared independence. The Velthari ships are protecting their core worlds from the pirate confederation that emerged after human patrols ended. The Altarian fleet is grounded. Half their crews are dying from the lung rot that spreads unchecked without human medicine. The chamber fell silent. The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. What about the defensive platforms? Along the Sentinel line? Asked the Quellian representative, its crystalline form dimming with worry. They went offline when the humans left, Granex reported. We've been trying to reactivate them, but we don't understand the systems. The humans modified them extensively. Without their codes and expertise, they're just floating metal. Krelok, the Zenthran representative, had been studying his datapad intensely. His tentacles were pale with fear. I've been analyzing the patterns. The Devourers aren't just randomly attacking. They're following the exact paths that human patrols used to guard. They know precisely where our defenses are weakest. How could they know that? Governor Melthas asked. His blue skin had lost its healthy glow. His own daughter had fallen ill again without human medical care. Because we have no defenses there anymore, Krelok said simply. The humans were covering 70% of our border. We never noticed because they did it so quietly, so efficiently. They never asked for recognition or payment, they just did it. A young aide rushed in with a tactical display. The hologram showed the galaxy, with red dots spreading from the breach like an infection. The Devourers are moving faster than our projections. At this rate, they'll reach the first core worlds within 3 months. Send a message to Earth, Zix Theta ordered. Tell them about the threat. Surely they'll help. The communications officer, a gaseous being called Wisp, swirled nervously. We've been trying to contact them for months. They don't respond. Their borders are closed. Any ship that approaches is turned away by automated defenses. What about back channels? Melthas suggested desperately. Personal connections? Some of us had human friends. All human communication devices went silent the day they left, Wisp reported. It's as if they've cut themselves off from the entire galaxy. The Velthari representative, who had been one of the strongest voices against humanity, coiled tighter in distress. Perhaps we were hasty in our judgment. Hasty? Krelok's tentacles whipped with anger. We told them they were too dangerous to trust. We said they were primitive, unpredictable, unworthy of sitting among us as equals. And now, when we face real danger, we want them to come save us? Another alert sounded. 3 more systems had gone dark. There's more, Granex said heavily. Without human agricultural techniques, food production has dropped by 40%. The power grids they maintained are failing. We don't understand. There are improvements well enough to fix them. The medical facilities they ran are overwhelmed. Trade has almost stopped because pirates control the main routes. The young Quellian spoke up again. I've been researching what the humans were actually doing all these years. Do you want to know what I found? Without waiting for an answer, it continued. They were running 60% of our hospitals. They were growing 30% of our food using techniques they developed. They were maintaining most of our defensive systems, not because we asked them to, but because they saw the need. They were teaching in our schools, sharing knowledge freely that we now realize we can't replicate. And the Sentinel line? Asked Torchine. The humans weren't just guarding it, the Quellian said. They were actively hunting Devourer scouts, destroying advance forces before they could report back. They were maintaining a buffer zone that we never even knew existed, The moment they left, that buffer collapsed. Zixitheta's form flickered with something that might have been shame. Bring up the records of human military actions over the past 50 years. The display filled with data points, thousands upon thousands of incidents. Pirate raids stopped, colony worlds defended, natural disasters responded to, plague outbreaks contained. Each incident was small, unremarkable. Together, they painted a picture of a species that had been quietly holding the galaxy together. They never asked for credit, Melthos said quietly. They just saw problems and fixed them, while we sat in our chambers debating their worthiness, Krelok added bitterly. Another alarm sounded. The Devourers had taken 5 more systems. The red dots on the display were spreading faster. What about hiring mercenaries? The Velthari suggested. With what? Granax asked. Our economy is collapsing. The humans were the backbone of our trade system. They connected species that wouldn't normally interact. They translated not just languages, but cultures. Without them, we're fragments, not a unified council. A communication came through from the front lines. A Zenthran captain appeared on the display, his ship burning behind him. We can't hold them. The Devourers adapt to everything we throw at them. We need those human tactical algorithms, their unpredictable strategies. We're fighting by the book, and they're reading the same book. The transmission cut off. Another ship lost. There's something else, Wisp said nervously. I've been monitoring energy readings from human space. They're building something. Multiple somethings. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Building what? Zixitheta asked. We don't know. But they're not hiding. It's as if they want us to know they're preparing for something. The young Quellian accessed another file. I found references to something called the Greenwich Protocol. It was a human contingency plan, created decades ago. If humanity was ever rejected by the galactic community, they would withdraw completely and activate this protocol. What does it do? Melthos asked. Unknown. But based on energy readings, they're not just defending their borders. They're preparing for something bigger. Another wave of alerts. The Devourers had broken through to a major shipping hub. Millions of refugees were fleeing toward the core worlds. We have to do something, Torchine said desperately. What can we do? Krelok asked. We told humanity they were too dangerous to trust with power. Now we're seeing what happens when that danger isn't protecting us. Zixtheta made a decision. Send our best diplomat to Earth. Make them any offer. Full membership, permanent council seats, anything they want. Who should we send? Melthos asked. Ancient Vormesh, Zixtheta replied. He's the only one humans ever truly respected. As they prepared the diplomatic mission, more systems fell. The refugee crisis worsened. Food shortages led to riots. Medical facilities collapsed under the strain. The perfect order the council had maintained for millennia crumbled in months. And in the midst of the chaos, one truth became painfully clear. The humans hadn't been the danger. They had been the shield. They had stood between the council and the darkness, asking for nothing but the chance to belong. Now they were gone, and the darkness was hungry. The crystal walls of the chamber had turned black with despair. For the first time in its existence, the Galactic Council was afraid. Not of the humans, but of their absence. They had pushed away their guardians, mocked their protectors, dismissed their defenders. And now, as the Devourers consumed world after world, they understood the true cost of their arrogance. The humans hadn't needed the Council. The Council had needed the humans. And now, it was too late. Ancient Vormesh had lived for 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall, watched species evolve from primitive tribes to spacefaring civilizations. But nothing in his long life had prepared him for what he saw at the entrance to human space. The defensive platforms surrounding the Sol system were impossible. They hurt to look at directly, as if reality itself bent around them. Geometric shapes that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space rotated slowly, their surfaces covered in weapons that seemed to fire through dimensions rather than across them. His diplomatic vessel approached slowly, broadcasting peace signals on all frequencies. For a long moment, there was no response. Then a human voice, calm and professional, came through the speakers. Ancient Vormesh, you are recognized. Proceed to Checkpoint Station Alpha. Do not deviate from the marked path. As his ship moved forward, Vormesh saw more impossible things, ships that seemed to be in multiple places at once, fighters that moved without regard for physics, a defensive web made of what looked like frozen time itself. At the checkpoint station, Admiral Julie Blackwood waited for him. She wore a uniform. He didn't recognize with insignia that meant nothing to the Council's databases. Behind her stood officers from species Vormesh had never seen before. Ancient Vormesh, Julie said with a polite nod. This is unexpected. Vormesh straightened his crystalline form, his surface shimmering with formal patterns of respect. Admiral Blackwood, I come bearing an urgent message from the Galactic Council. I assumed as much, Julie replied. Please, speak your piece. Vormesh had rehearsed this moment for the entire journey. The Council extends its formal invitation for humanity to accept full membership, with permanent seats on the High Council and veto authority over all military decisions. Julie's expression didn't change. Not a muscle moved in her face. That's very generous. Unfortunately, we've moved in a different direction. Admiral, please. Vormesh's form flickered with desperation. The Devourers have broken through. A quarter of Council space has already fallen. Billions are dead or dying. We need your help. I'm aware of the situation, Julie said. She gestured to a wall display showing a real-time map of the galaxy. The spread of the Devourers was marked in red. We've been monitoring it closely. Then you know how desperate things are, Vormesh said. Whatever grievances you have with the Council, surely you won't let innocent worlds burn. Julie was quiet for a moment. Then she gestured for him to follow her. They walked through the station to an observation deck. Through the transparent walls, Vormesh could see hundreds of ships, but these weren't just human vessels. He recognized Rokari designs, mesh collective configurations, and dozens of other species. Do you know who the Rokari are? Julie asked. A primitive species from the Outer Rim, Vormesh replied. They applied for Council membership 200 years ago. They were rejected for being too aggressive. And the Mesh Collective? A hive mind. Rejected for being too alien, too different from standard Council species. Julie nodded. And the Synthetic Liberation Front? Artificial intelligences. The Council banned them as abominations. Yes, Julie said. The Council rejected them all. Too primitive, too strange, too dangerous, too different. Sound familiar? She turned to face him fully. While the Council was busy deciding who was worthy, we were busy finding allies among the unworthy. The Rokari's aggression? It makes them incredible warriors. The Mesh Collective's alien thought patterns? They see solutions we could never imagine. The synthetics? They process battle data in nanoseconds. A hologram appeared between them, showing a vast network of connections between Earth and dozens of worlds Vormesh had never considered important. We call it the Terran Alliance, Julie continued. Not because Earth leads it, but because Terra means ground in our old language. We're the ground on which others can stand. Every species brings something unique. Together, we're stronger than the Council ever was. But the Devourers, Vormesh began. Are the Council's problem, Julie interrupted. We've secured our borders and those of our allies. Our combined technologies have created defenses the Devourers can't breach. You would let the Council burn? Vormesh couldn't hide his shock. Julie's expression finally changed, showing a hint of the anger beneath. The Council had humanity for 100 years. We protected your borders, cured your diseases, fed your hungry, defended your weak. And what was our reward? To be told we were too dangerous to trust, too primitive to sit as equals. She gestured to the alien officers around them. Every species here knows what it's like to be rejected, to be told they're not good enough. We don't make that mistake. We see potential where the Council sees flaws. A Rokari warrior stepped forward. Its voice was harsh but clear. The humans didn't conquer us. They came to us as equals, offering partnership, not judgment. They shared their technology freely, learned our ways, taught us theirs. They did what the Council never would. They respected us. The Mesh Collective spoke through a drone, its 1,000 voices harmonizing. We were called abominations. Humans called us fascinating. We were feared. Humans sought to understand us. The Council wanted us to change. Humans wanted us to be ourselves. A synthetic approached, its metallic form graceful despite its mechanical nature. The Council declared us soulless. Humans debated philosophy with us. The Council banned our existence. Humans helped us flourish. Vormesh felt something he hadn't experienced in millennia. Shame. We were wrong. Yes, Julie said simply, you were. But being wrong isn't the problem. The problem is that you were warned. Every species here tried to tell you that your standards were arbitrary, your judgments flawed. You didn't listen. You were so convinced of your own superiority that you couldn't see the strength in difference. Another human officer approached with a data pad. Julie glanced at it and frowned. The Devourers have reached the Altarian homeworld. Vormesh's form cracked slightly, a sign of extreme distress. Governor Melthas is there. His daughter. She was saved by human medicine. I remember, Julie said softly. Dr. Catherine Shaw spent months developing that cure. Is she here? Could she help? She's designing new medical facilities for the Rakari colonies. You see, they appreciate her work. Vormesh tried one more time. Admiral, I'm not asking for the Council. I'm asking for the billions of innocent beings who will die. They had no say in the Council's decision. Julie was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the Alliance officers watched silently. Finally, she spoke. We'll accept refugees on a case-by-case basis. Species that want to join the Alliance can apply, but they start at the bottom. No special privileges for former Council members. They'll have to prove they can work with others as equals, not superiors. And the Council itself? The Galactic Council is no longer recognized by the Terran Alliance. It's a failed institution that prioritized conformity over diversity, stagnation over growth, fear over understanding. Vormesh made one last desperate attempt. What if we offered you leadership of the Council? Humanity could reshape it as you see fit. Julie actually laughed, though there was no humor in it. You still don't understand. We don't want to lead the Council. We don't want to fix it. We've built something better. Every member of the Alliance has an equal voice. Decisions are made by consensus, not decree. Strength is shared, not hoarded. She gestured to the vast fleet visible through the observation deck. Look at what we've accomplished in 6 months. Defensive technologies that make the Devourers hesitate. Medical advances from combining 40 different biological sciences. Agricultural techniques that could feed a galaxy. All because we didn't waste time judging worthiness, we just worked together. So there's no hope? Vormesh asked. There's always hope, Julie said. Just not from us. The Council wanted to stand alone, superior, and separate. Now you can prove you were right. Show the galaxy that you don't need the dangerous, unpredictable humans. As Vormesh prepared to leave, Julie added one more thing. Tell the Council, we're not your enemies. We're simply no longer your shields. What happens next is up to you. On his journey back, Vormesh passed through what had once been secure Council space. He saw refugee ships streaming from burning worlds. He saw the remnants of proud fleets retreating from an enemy they couldn't understand or defeat. He saw the collapse of a civilization that had endured for millennia, and he understood with perfect clarity the true magnitude of the Council's mistake. They hadn't just rejected humanity, they had rejected the future. And now, as the past burned around them, they could only watch as humanity and their new allies built something better from the ashes of their arrogance. High Counselor Zix Theta stood alone on the observation deck of the Council's last stronghold. Outside, the galaxy burned. The crystal walls around it had turned a deep, permanent black, the color of complete despair. A quarter of Council space had fallen to the Devourers. The attacking force had consumed entire systems, leaving nothing but dead rocks and empty space. Refugee ships numbered in the millions, fleeing toward the core worlds that could barely feed their own populations. The economy had collapsed completely. Without human trade networks connecting disparate species, each world had retreated into isolation. The Zenthran Empire had split into 17 warring factions. The Velthari had sealed their borders, shooting down even refugee ships. The Altarians were dying by the millions from plagues that human medicine had once held at bay. Krelok entered the observation deck, his tentacles dragging on the floor. Once proud and dismissive, he now looked broken. Another 12 systems have gone dark. The Devourers are learning, adapting. They've figured out all our defensive patterns. Because our patterns never change, Zix Theta replied. We've been using the same strategies for 1,000 years. The humans kept suggesting new approaches, but we called them chaotic, unpredictable. Through the windows, they could see the last council fleet gathering. 300 ships, all that, remained of a force that had once numbered in the tens of thousands. They were preparing for a final stand at the core worlds. Any word from ancient Vormesh? Krelok asked. He returned yesterday, Zixatheta said. The humans refused. They've formed something called the Terran Alliance with all the species we rejected. They're thriving while we collapse. Governor Melthus joined them, his blue skin now pale and sickly. His daughter had died the week before, the lung rot finally claiming her when human medicine was no longer available. I've received intelligence from our last spy drone near Alliance space. He activated a hologram. It showed the borders of the Terran Alliance glowing with activity. Ships of impossible design patrolled borders that the Devourers hadn't even attempted to breach. Worlds that the Council had dismissed as primitive now hosted advanced cities. Species that had been called dangerous or unsuitable worked together, in perfect harmony. Look at them, Melthus said bitterly. The Rokari, who we called too violent, are teaching the humans new combat techniques. The Mesh Collective, who we called too alien, are solving problems we couldn't even understand. The Synthetics, who we banned as abominations, are coordinating defenses across 1,000 light-years simultaneously. And the humans? Zix Theta asked. They're the glue, Melthus replied. They don't lead the Alliance, they enable it. They translate not just languages, but entire ways of thinking. They find common ground between species that have nothing in common. They see strength where we saw weakness. A communication came through. Jack Morrison appeared on the screen, broadcasting from the bridge of a ship called Perseverance. Behind him stood representatives of the Alliance, beings the Council had rejected, now standing as equals with humanity. Members of the Galactic Council, Jack said, his voice calm and steady. We're broadcasting this message to all remaining Council worlds. Zix Theta moved closer to the screen. This was the first direct communication from the humans since they left. We tried to tell you, Jack continued. Humanity's greatest strength was never our weapons or our technology. It wasn't our unpredictability or our passion. It was our ability to see potential where others saw flaws, to find family among strangers, to stand with those who stood with us. The image shifted to show the Alliance fleet, thousands of ships of mixed design, working in perfect coordination despite their differences. You saw our willingness to work with anyone as weakness, Jack said. You saw our emotional connections as primitive. You saw our refusal to abandon others as foolish. You were so afraid of what we might become that you never saw what we already were, the shield at your back, the hand extended in friendship, the ones who would have died defending you despite your contempt. The transmission changed to show Admiral Julie Blackwood. The Terran Alliance will accept refugees on a case-by-case basis. Individual species may apply for associate status after a probationary period. The Galactic Council, as an entity, is no longer recognized by our government. The screen went dark. Krelok's tentacles writhed in frustration. They're going to let us die. No, Zixatheta said quietly. They're letting us face the consequences of our choices. There's a difference. Another alert sounded. The Devourers had broken through the last defensive line. They would reach the Council's core worlds within days. Should we evacuate? Melthos asked. Where would we go? Zix Theta replied. We made ourselves superior by making others inferior. Now we have no allies, no friends, no one who mourns our passing. They watched as the last Council fleet moved to intercept the Devourers. The battle was brief and brutal. Council ships fought with perfect precision, executing thousand-year-old tactics flawlessly. The Devourers, having learned these patterns, tore through them like paper. As the fleet burned, something unexpected happened. A small group of ships appeared at the edge of the battle. Not Alliance military vessels, but civilian ships bearing Alliance markings. They began evacuating survivors from the destroyed Council vessels. A message came through from one of the rescue ships. Captain Ellen Nash of the vessel Compassion appeared on screen. She was human, but her crew was mixed. Rokari, synthetics, mesh drones, and others. This is Captain Nash to any Council survivors. We're here to evacuate anyone who needs help. No conditions, no requirements, just get to the escape pods. Zix Theta couldn't understand. Why? Why would you save us? Ellen looked directly at the camera. Because that's who we are. That's who we've always been. The ones who answer when others call for help. You may have rejected us, but we never rejected our own humanity. As the Compassion and other rescue ships worked, the Devourers continued their advance. But something strange happened. The hive mind seemed to recognize the Alliance ships and actively avoided them, flowing around them like water around rocks. They're not attacking the rescue ships, Krelock observed in amazement. The Alliance must have found a way to make themselves unappetizing to the Devourers, Melta said. Something we never figured out because we were too proud to try new approaches. Over the next days, Alliance rescue ships saved millions of Council citizens. They didn't discriminate, didn't judge, didn't ask whether the refugees had voted for or against humanity. They simply saved everyone they could. When the evacuation was complete, the refugees were taken to Alliance space. There, they found worlds, prepared to receive them, medical facilities ready to treat them, and food supplies already distributed. The efficiency and compassion of the operation was staggering. The former Council members were given a choice. Remain as refugees under Alliance. Protection or apply to join as provisional members. The requirements were simple but revolutionary for the former Council. Work alongside other species as equals. Contribute what you can, take only what you need, and judge others by their actions, not their origins. Some adapted quickly, especially the younger generations who had questioned the Council's rigid ways. Others struggled, their ingrained superiority hard to shake. But slowly, painfully, they learned. Zix Theta found itself working in a mixed-species medical facility, its unique energy-based biology helping to develop new treatments. For the first time in its long existence, it worked alongside beings it had once considered inferior. A human doctor, a Rokari healer, a synthetic data analyst, all equals, all contributing. One day, months after the fall of the Council, Zix Theta encountered Jack Morrison in the facility. The human was visiting recovering refugees, offering encouragement and support. Ambassador Morrison, Zix Theta said, I need to ask you something. Jack stopped and waited patiently. You knew this would happen, Zix Theta said. When we rejected you knew the Council would fall. Jack considered his words carefully. We suspected. You'd grown so rigid, so afraid of change that you couldn't adapt anymore. The Devourers were just the catalyst. If it hadn't been them, it would have been something else. But you prepared. The Greenwich Protocol, it wasn't just about defending Earth, was it? No, Jack admitted. It was about building something new. Something flexible, adaptive, inclusive. We knew that the galaxy's future couldn't be in the hands of those who feared diversity. So we found others who embraced it. And now you lead them. Jack shook his head. No one leads the Alliance. We coordinate, we facilitate, we translate, but every species has an equal voice. That's the difference between us and the Council. You ruled from above. We stand together. As Jack walked away, Zix Theta understood the final, most painful truth. The Council hadn't been destroyed by the Devourers, or even by humanity's withdrawal. It had been destroyed by its own arrogance. Its fear of change, its need to be superior. The humans hadn't conquered them. They hadn't destroyed them. They had done something far more devastating. They had simply walked away, taking their strength, their innovation, and their protection with them. And then, when the council fell, they had returned not as conquerors, but as rescuers, showing a mercy that the council had never offered them. In that mercy, the greatest lesson was learned. True strength didn't come